This fellow Eric Dollard, he pops up. He really is Tesla reincarnated. He showed up in the 70s at Borderlands Research in California. Peter Lindemann. So I'll read this to you because it's really the hardcore. Let us turn to the Heaviside equation, which is the most fundamental equation in all electrical engineering. Rg plus Xb is the real part plus J, an imaginary part, Xg minus Rb is equal to the propagation constant squared, where R is resistance, G is conductance, X is reactance, henries per second, B is susceptance, and farads per second. So Rg is the scalar DC component that is not a wave. Xb is longitudinal or AC component and is an alternating wave. Xg is the transverse component and is a forward-moving oscillating electric wave, and Rb is a transverse component and is a reverse oscillating electric wave, transverse, and the imaginary parts. So this equation allows for all electrical conditions in time and or space and combinations thereof. The example equation is the dimensions of time, and he gives his papers, Steinmetz's. He gives an example of air in a room with the stereo playing. He makes his comments. He says, get it? And he says, if people don't understand this fundamental concept, my time is better spent talking to my pet coyotes. I have nothing further to say. Eric has been kicked around a lot. He's been suppressed. And, he pops up in amateur radio forums every now and then. And whenever he posts something on the internet in a forum, people are just all over it. They love him. Please, Eric, share more. He really does understand.
But everybody knows you can't tame a coyote, they're not tameable.
So he'd rather spend his time trying, I guess. Or he has. He's done what everybody knows can't be done. So what might this be? Maybe I missed something. Maybe you're going to go back and say, oh, well, it's just so-and-so. It's just near-field communications developed in 2002 by NXP, Infineon, and Sony. Well, it's not that, because it's limited to 10 centimeters, and it's low power. Maybe it's PowerCast. We've heard about that. No, that's very low energy, just used to recharge batteries, cell phones and things. It's not that. Maybe it's this MIT thing, Witricity. What you do is put an inductive, you build it into the that you build into the stud space of your wall, and you have sort of limited range of inductive coupling. This is the associate professor at MIT. Jasik, it's his baby. So here's his paper. We investigate whether and to what extent the physical phenomena of long lifetime resonant electromagnetic states with localized slowly evanescent field patterns can be used to transfer energy efficiently over non-negligible distances, even in the presence of extraneous environmental objects. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? He says, in the early days of electromagnetism, before we had electric grids, serious interest and effort was devoted, notably by Tesla, toward the development of schemes of transporting energy over distances without any carrier medium, i.e. wires. These efforts appear to have met with little success. So, Professor Solaszek is not doing this. So, as far as I can tell, this is different than anything on the scene. I say, get your physics from an engineer, an electrical engineer. This fellow, Don Scott, has done phenomenal work with the electric sky and the electric universe. His theory, I don't know if anybody's run across it, they're wonderful reads for electrical people. He says that the sun is not a nuclear furnace. It's an arc, like a welding arc, and it's fed electrically, and the Earth is fed in turn. The whole universe is electric. And if you look at plasma in the universe is fascinating because it's what electricity does when it's not constrained by a perimeter of a wire. That's This is disembodied electricity. It flows without limit. Things like that. So, I mean, the test of whether a theory deserves your support is you can't make predictions. Yes? They are making wonderful predictions relative to comets and well, just the whole universe, the operation of things. But astrophysicists have no time whatsoever for Duns Scott and the electric universe. They said, no, we don't do it that way. We're not going to change our textbooks. This Professor Eric Laithwaite, he invented perhaps the most celebrated engineer in Britain in the 70s. He invented maglev trains and linear motors. He was a stupendously successful professor at Imperial College. He got on to things that spin, gyroscopes. And basically he was invited out of Imperial College and ended up at Suffolk University, I think. He was basically shunned. He was not made a member of the order. I can't remember the order that he was. He should have received in the normal course of affairs a high honor for his professional achievements, and did not. He said, "Things that spin are magic: wheels, electrons, galaxies." And he said, "The absence of a force where it ought to have acted, that means something." He said, "It means there's a vortex. Whenever there's a vortex, strange things start happening. If you're a careful observer." In a 1974 Christmas lecture at Imperial College, he took a 9-year-old boy named Dennis and gave him a fast-rotating gyroscope at the end of a pole. Dennis was strapped to a pole on a rotating platform. And Dennis was able to move this heavy rotating gyroscope in a way that a 9-year-old boy couldn't do. So there's the absence of a force where it ought to have acted. And for that, Laithwaite was tossed out on his ear. So that's how these things happen. If you get your physics from an engineer, especially an emeritus engineer, right, a retired professor, and Sid Deutsch is that. So photosynthesis, we could say that's an antenna receiving scalar radiation. Maybe, again, nature is using this. These pigment molecules form a type of light harvesting antenna, more efficient at interacting with sunlight than would be possible with the pigments acting alone, not in that shape. It turns out there's a light function, an illuminated function, daytime of photosynthesis, and there's a dark function of photosynthesis. What would be powering the dark function? Might it be the ether? So, I don't know whether, how many people may know of PESWiki, Pure Energy Systems Wiki, with Sterling Allen. I spoke to him this week, and he's anxious to participate in turning this into an open source project, meaning that people can join, they can build a reference thing and share results. Here's the bill of materials for it. The total is $442 plus an oscilloscope. Get yourself an isoscope if you don't have one. The most expensive thing here is a USB arbitrary function generator from China. I didn't bring one, but I have the manual for it here. You just plug it into your PC and you can dial up to 75 megahertz sine wave and lots of other waveforms, as you might imagine. And arbitrary waveform in the sense that you can draw anything you want and it will execute it. So there's a digital signal processor. It's a wonderful peripheral. The software that it comes with leaves something to be desired, especially for our use here, because we'd like to be able to use the mouse wheel to vary the frequency, because we're going to looking for resonance. So Jamie in the back of the room, and Greg, that I'm privileged to work with. In the course of less than a day, they solved that little problem. producing a custom driver for this. So we'll make that available for the open source project. The other thing we'd like is a sweep function. You can set the low frequency and the high, and set the discrete frequency step and the time, the duration. We should be able to do whatever you want there, so you can go looking for the response of the system that you're building. The nice thing about our little coils here is you start out with a piece of wood, maybe an 1/8 inch thick, and a piece of acrylic plastic is clear covering, and you just bolt them together pretty tight and then start winding. The trick is to keep just one wire thick. It really wants to double up on it. You can't let it. So it's got to be a true spiral. And you can wind as many turns as you want. You can wind any direction you want. You can wind the secondary in any configuration. So Professor Miles sells these printed circuit board antennas on his store. They're quite expensive, and that has really suppressed participation. A lot of the web comments are, well, it's way too expensive, so that's the end of that. So our goal here with this open source project is to make it very cheap. I mean, maybe it's $442 to get started. That gives you 1,000 feet of wire. Away you go. And you can be playful in a way you can't with noise. Now there's another important matter, and that's the direction that you wind the wire. It might matter. From Professor Mile, the transmitter and receiver are the same. They're not different. Well, when I looked at the patent by Tesla, and it's drawn opposite, the transmitter is different than the receiver. So we tried it, and we found that it does make a difference. It is a positive change. So Tesla knew what he was doing. These little poppers here, this is in lieu of the sphere, which is kind of hard to sort. These are from hard drives, of course. This is 632. Threaded rod you can get at Home Depot. So there you go. Elevate your conductor. So what I've got here is a transmitter wound clockwise and 2 receivers wound counterclockwise, and the scope shows the response. The receivers are loaded with 100 ohms non-inductive resistors, and the scope waveforms show the voltage that is induced. Again, over a single wire, there's only the ground reference connecting these 3 devices, but energy is absolutely transferred from transmitter to receiver, and it's shared between the 2 receivers because they're equal, they're brothers. So that's the basis of our open source project. Coming soon. So you can do this in your basement. It's easy to wind the coils. It's just an antenna, one diameter thick or high, and you can be playful. You need to get this arbitrary function generator, but you should have one anyway. It'll go up to 75 megahertz sine and 25 megahertz with more sophisticated waveforms. I mean, if you want to put a noise spike on something, you can fill up with a negative one. You can do it anything you want. It's a wonderful tool. And you don't need to buy it from Agilent. Finally, AE 911 Truth. You should check it out. You should sign up. Sign the petition. That's OT, that's off time.